Wars of 1858. Are you unaware of the conflicts that arose that year?
1858? That was over 100 years ago. What is the significance today?
In 1858, U.S. Colonel George Wright killed Indians and murdered their horses. He effectively committed the genocide of an entire people, right here in Spokane. It was immoral and wrong, and it's important for us to realize that that kind of action is never justified.
But what Stuckey wrote here, Wright was just following orders. Look, Stuckey even includes an article that says there was a bounty on Indians, $80 for chiefs and $20 for warriors. If that doesn't speak to the time period, I don't know what will.
But that doesn't make immorality in any time period okay. I wish there was a way for us to hear from the men directly. By 35, I was an accomplished general in the U.S. Army. I accompanied Scott's army in the invasion of Mexico and was engaged in every battle from the siege of Veracruz to the assault of Molino del Rey. For my gallant and meritorious services in war, I received brevets of lieutenant and colonel. In 1855, I was placed at the head of the 9th Infantry in the front of the war in the Pacific Northwest. And by 55 years old, I had killed 800 Native American horses and thousands of Indian souls. My name is Colonel George Wright, and this is my story.
I was an influential Native American leader of the Middle Spokane tribe. At the age of 14, the Hudson's Bay Company sent me to an Anglican mission school in Manitoba, where I was taught to read, write, and speak English and French, which allowed me to act as a liaison between the white settlers and natives in the area. I was a lifelong advocate for the fair land settlement of local tribes and never wavered on the insistence that the Spokane Indians should have native land along the Spokane River, a goal which proved unattainable. My name is Chief Spokane Geary. The Spokane Indian Wars are how they're remembered, but that is not totally true. There were many tribes involved, and we found support from natives as far as Montana and southern Oregon.
We arrived at Fort Monroe in early 1858 with direct orders from the east and a letter. The letter read, "There are 3 kinds of Indians in the United States. The first 2 types have either been civilized by American society or are making progress towards civilization. Then there is the 3rd kind, those in the Oregon and Washington territories who are wild, roving, and fierce, and retaining all the traditional characteristics which marked the race before the advent of the white man. General Clark demanded that we subdue the wild Indians by any means necessary, that we punish them and refuse trying to treaty. I was given orders to take my troops north of Fort Colville in Spokane, but in the process, we were faced with resistance by the Colville Indian tribe.
News traveled fast. We made the decision to stay out of the physical conflict and allow Chief Moses to handle the situation. However, they were outnumbered and outgunned. So I made the decision to move our tribe from the Spokane Falls Latah Creek settlement 16 miles down the river to assume a stronger position for battle.
In the early stages of our expedition, me and my men had far superior forces when faced against the natives. But when heading into Spokane, I was anxious and unsure of the advantage we had. Therefore, we came with a different approach.
At our new fort, we were in a better position for battle, stronger and less susceptible. But we couldn't have been prepared for what you and your men did next.
We continued following our orders. Subdue your kind by any means necessary. It was fair, and I am not ashamed of our victory.
You burned food storages. You murdered innocent women and children. You took so many hostages. For what? Spite? You were doing more than following orders. I was trying to find compromise. However, you seemed determined to settle our conflict with violence.
Violence? I was following orders, nothing more. September 8th and 9th, 1858. We had set up camp along the banks of the Spokane River, near the border between Washington and Idaho. We captured 800 Palouse horses and slaughtered them, thus preventing the Indians from waging further warfare. In fact, once the horses were out of the picture, many tribes chose to surrender. It was a move that brought us closer to the end of the war in the Pacific Northwest.
During the slaughtering, witnesses have said that after Wright realized shooting the horses was taking too much of their ammunition, he and his men began beating the helpless horses to death because it was a cheaper solution. You knowingly threatened the survival of my people in the U.S. Horses were our way of life. Without them, there was no hunting, no protection, and no trade.
After this act, Father Josette, a Jesuit of the Coeur d'Alene mission, appealed to us in an attempt to make peace. In response to his plea, we traveled to the Coeur d'Alene mission and agreed to a peace treaty. Then, on the morning of September 23rd, 1858, along Latah Creek, I met with at least 200 Indians who were asking for peace. As I later wrote in my journal, they acknowledged their extreme crimes and expressed great sorrow for what they had done, and thankfulness for the mercy extended to them. That evening, Chief Owie unexpectedly arrived in our camp. He was immediately shackled and taken as hostage, but we were after his son, Qualchin. When Qualchin arrived the next morning in search of his son, he was hung within 15 minutes of entering our camp.
Do you not agree that this was too much? They were there to negotiate peace. Qualchin's wife, Wisdox, wrote this. There was no timber close to where they camped, but they planted a large stick in the ground, tied my husband's legs together, his hands behind his back, put a rope around his neck, and strangled him to death. They must have seen from the expression on my face that I anguished, but they heeded not. I met with Chief Plotkin, and we told everybody else at the meeting to spread word and tell their people that we would again push the treaty with right. Things had gone too far. Too many lives had been wasted.
My response to this request was simple. I was very willing to negotiate peace, as long as they would do the same. In a letter to Chief Spokane Gary, I wrote, I have met you in 2 bloody battles. You have been badly whipped. You have lost several chiefs and many warriors, a large force. And you Spokanes, Coeur d'Alenes, Palousas, and Pend d'Oreilles may unite, and I can beat you as badly as before. I did not come into this country to ask you to make peace. I came here to fight. So when you are tired of war and ask for peace, I shall tell you what you must do. You must come to me with your arms, with your women and children and everything that you have, and lay them at my feet. You must put your faith in me and trust to my mercy. If you do this, I shall then dictate upon terms to which I will grant you peace. But if you do not do this, war will be made on you this year and the next, until your nations shall be exterminated.
First, you met us on the battlefield with superior weaponry. Then, you slaughtered our way of life. And finally, you murdered our passionate leaders. This is inexcusable.
Excuse me. After my expedition, white settlers had more land to build on, and your people agreed to compromise their land for the lives of their families. You got your own plot of land, so considering the end result, all that fighting ended in a compromise.
We were stripped of our land, our religion, and our spirituality. Everything we knew had changed. We thought that we could push right out of our land to protect it, and throughout 1855 to 1858, we had the intentions to keep fighting. We pushed hard, but George Wright won. Ultimately, he enacted a cultural genocide.
Wright's stern tactics drew the conflicts to an end, sending Indians to reservations across the Pacific Northwest.
In addition to the relocation of natives, it is still a debate today of whether Wright's actions were justified. This controversy is inappropriate. No matter the time period, Wright's actions were unjustified and excessively cruel and brutal.
We cannot condone behavior because of our past. This action perpetuates stereotypes, discrimination, and justifies historical immorality. In order for us to move forward, we must recognize and acknowledge George Wright's extreme crimes and allow for healing among those affected.